Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, we've got a couple of new production reports to dissect from TeraWulf and Hut 8 Corp, which was a surprise to me as we weren't expecting monthly updates for the foreseeable future. Now, in addition to that, you guys, the price of Bitcoin has really broken down over the last 24 hours. We're going to be talking about that in addition to the upcoming difficulty adjustment. So we've got a lot to go through in today's video. Before we do though, please take a second, smash the like button. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let us know in the comments section below if you're currently holding shares of TeraWulf or Hut 8, your thoughts on the mid-year production results from the miner sector, and your overall outlook on the space for the back half of 2024. Now with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we've got a stacked agenda for you. First things first, happy 4th of July to all of the viewers in the United States. You guys, obviously the US markets are closed today, which is probably a good thing based on the price of Bitcoin, Anthony. We've seen a pretty big pullback, down about 5% today. So we're gonna get into that first. And then we've got a production report actually from Hut 8, which was a surprise to see this early in the month, and TeraWulf as well, with some really interesting news that talks about some of the port opportunities down the road for that property in a Nautilus location. So a lot to go through today in today's video, Anthony. But first and foremost, the price of Bitcoin, it's fallen off about 20% this last month. What do you make of the price of Bitcoin here, this price action? I know you like to say Bitcoin does what Bitcoin does. Anything to be worried about here?
I'm less worried. I think once you've been through a cycle, you've been through the whole bear cycle, and you're coming through the other side. And we talked only yesterday for hours. It was hours, and the Bitcoin price, we'd say it was in that stability line there of 65,000 for the last 3 or 4 months, but it's dropped below that. There are some of the technical people had been saying, it could potentially drop to say 57, and there's various support levels below that. But I don't tend to sort of like worry about the Bitcoin price on a day-to-day basis. I'm thinking a bit farther ahead than that, and that we've had some really good news out lately for the miners. The miners have retraced back. If you look at where Bitcoin was in March when it reached its all-time high of 73,000, 74,000, and you see it come off now, it's off like 30% from where it was then. A lot of these miners in that same period, some of them are up 200% since March the 13th. So, we've seen that we thought it was decoupling one way. Now it looks like the miners are getting a little bit more benefit, and that's a lot of miners, not just like one or two miners. Quite a few of them are actually up since the 13th of March, even though the Bitcoin price has dropped. So as long as we keep seeing these the updates from the ETFs to say they're still buying, I don't think we've got too much to worry about. There are other factors that are involved. You're always going to get the people who are trading Bitcoin, and that can't help the price action. Some days, if you're gambling to say it's going to drop in price and there's nothing you're doing it, maybe it does impact the price that way. But I try not to look at a I'm not too interested day to day. I'm more interested, how it did since last month. So, at the end of June, it was 62,000. I'd like to say today's 57,000. So it's dropped, best part of 7 or 8% since the end of the month in the last few days. But I'm not looking at it on a day-to-day basis, and it works the same. Not looking at the miners on a day-to-day basis as well. But we have seen some great movements in the miners lately to keep us interested.
Yeah, most definitely. That comment you made about decoupling the other way is interesting because there was so much sentiment towards MicroStrategy and Bitcoin ETFs just a few months ago, Anthony. Everyone was thinking the Bitcoin miners where was money goes to die. And now with the HPC, the AI play coming in, it's really given a new life to this sector, almost allowing these companies to trade independently of the price of Bitcoin. It was funny this morning. I talked to Anthony early and I said, wow, the market's holding up pretty good compared to the price of Bitcoin. And he quickly reminded me that the US market was closed today, and that was only just my Canadian listed Hut 8 and Bitfarms shares that were down about 5% each on the session. So, Anthony, the other factor here that's going to impact miners is the difficulty adjustment. This is one we've been following for the last couple episodes. Can you give us a quick update on what we're expecting here?
Yeah, so I'll talk about difficulty in a second, but the first thing is really about the global hash rate has been pulling back. So, you know, we look at miners' revenue in terms of hash price. So how much revenues they can get for each petahash they have on the actual utilized at the time. So energized hash rate, and we've seen it today actually reach an all-time low. So it's hovering around the 44 cents. Prior to the halving, miners were getting 110, some days 120 cents per petahash per day for each petahash they had energized. Now it's down to 44. That's a low amount. That's nearly a third of what they were getting pre-halving for some of the miners. So what you're seeing now is you are seeing the switch off now of a considerable amount of the network, and the difficulty adjustment, which is going to change in the next, I think it's about 12 hours time, is going to be a reduction. Now at the moment it's forecasting around about the 5%, and it was forecasting 5% yesterday. So there is some volatility in that difficulty as we get closer and closer to the actual change, but it looks like we're definitely going to see lower difficulty, because we've been seeing the average time it takes to mine a block way over 10 minutes, and that taking too long. It has, the difficulty will get it back to 10 minutes, so they'll make it a little bit easier for these miners to find the next number. And I don't believe any of the North American public miners, the fact that they've got the most efficient machines, the fact that they've probably got access to the cheapest power because of the size of some of these companies. We're not talking, a couple of $1 million companies. We've got 10, $11 billion miners now, and they'll be able to, attract some of the lowest rates of energy available because of the sheer size and the sheer usage. So they can negotiate really well with utility companies. So it won't be them switching off. It'll be like maybe some of the non-public miners, smaller miners, who basically have older machines. Maybe they might have access to reasonably cheap power, but if you've got an inefficient miner, if you're still using like the S17s or the older S19s, you're not making money at today's hash price. So you're then having to sort of, if you're still mining, you're gambling then on the Bitcoin price really rallying. And we don't give price predictions on Bitcoin because, look what happened in the last sort of 24 hours. It's down, 2-3%. So nobody can say what it's going to be tomorrow. We'd like to think in the long-term position, just like other stores of value, things tend to rise. And the great thing about Bitcoin is there's only 21 million of them. It's not like there's an extra one hanging around there or an extra 500 going to be built. It's 21 million full stop. And I believe some people have already come up with a calculation to determine how much of that 21 million is actually lost. Just thinking about the amount of people who forgot their keys to access the Bitcoin. And we've talked about tails on the podcast before. And so, 3 to 4 million Bitcoin is probably lost. So then you're down to sort of 17, 18 million Bitcoin end of.
One of your buddies lost a bunch in a landfill over there, didn't he, Anthony?
He lost a bunch of landfill that he'd not paid too much for, but the value of it's great when you get the Bitcoin price rallying to where it is. I mean, 12, 13 years ago, it was like a few cents a Bitcoin. You could buy 1,000 Bitcoin for a few dollars. Now, if you had access to that 1,000 Bitcoin, we wouldn't be spending time doing podcasts every day. We'd be on a boat or a private jet flying to locations we'd like to spend more time in. So yeah, it's it's volatile, but I think because that's scarcity, that appeals as well. So gold, they say gold is a scarce asset, but they're mining gold every day. There's countries like Kazakhstan, Australia, where South America, where they're mining gold still. It's still being produced. It's not like there's only a certain amount, but with Bitcoin, 100%, there's only going to be 21 million, and we've just articulated that maybe 15% of that pot as will never be found again. And so you're making it even more scarce by having less available Bitcoin for institutions to buy effectively. So, we've seen one ETF buy way over 200,000 Bitcoin in the last 5 months. That's just one ETF.
Yeah,
There's about 11 or 12 that were approved.
it's
So
incredible. And if
it
you
is,
read
it
the
is,
book,
it's incredible. And if you look at how much Bitcoin was mined in that period, it was a fraction of that. We're only mining 450 a day. It was 900 a day before the halving. So 900 a day in a month, that's 27,000 a month for the first 3.5 months of the year. So you're into sort of 80, 90,000 the first 3 months. And now you're only mining 13,000 a month. So that one ETF bought something like one, maybe 1.5 to 2 times the amount of production physically mined in the first 6 months. So, more, 150 or 200% of what was mined. And so that's just one ETF fund. As I say, there was 11 approved on the same day. So, and that was yes, that was the biggest one. But the second ETF fund isn't that far behind either. They'll probably get to 200,000 maybe this year as well. So, there's still a lot of interest in there. And as long as we see those, the more adoption, the more people that speak positive about Bitcoin. It's now being used as an election vote for, in the US. I mean, you've got Donald Trump, who's like, supporting Bitcoin and had photographs with all the sort of like top mining CEOs recently at a meeting that he held with them to understand more about the Bitcoin, more what it does to the energy market as a stabilizing feature that Bitcoin has. It can stabilize the grid because it can utilize energy when there's no other use for the energy and keep the grid balanced. You don't want to have a grid with 5 gigawatts that's not being used. You need to use the energy. It's no use having 5 gigawatts that's used, 10 minutes in the morning when breakfast has been made and half an hour in the evening when dinner's being produced and people are having a cup of tea, the kettle goes on or something like that. That's when the power, you want to be able to, if you're producing 5 gigawatts, you want to make sure you can utilize most of that 5 gigawatts. And miners do that perfectly. Switch on and switch off as required and do it
within
very
minutes.
quickly.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Anthony, if you read the book, The Bitcoin Standard, I'm sure you have, hey? They talk a lot about hard money and truly finite resources, really, as Bitcoin being the only one in the world. Some people would, I guess, say your time as well is finite, but a very interesting angle, Anthony. And as you say, any other precious metal, if the economics are right, they can go out there and find more gold or silver or copper or whatever they need. You can't do that in the case of Bitcoin. So I would concur with you. I think I keep saying this. I'm hoping this is our last kind of flush out before we start to move up into those higher new all-time high levels, but we'll see. And as we say, time will tell. Good to see the difficulty coming down and giving the miners a little bit of a break here, as we know they could use one on the Bitcoin side. Now, shifting gears over to Hut 8 Corp. This one's interesting, Anthony. They didn't put out a monthly production report last month, or at least within the first couple of weeks. We had talked to Sue. We had asked where that was going to be. Didn't really get a lot of direction. Then on the interview, they had said, hey, you know what? We want to recalibrate, focus on all of the different business units rather than just self-mining. Didn't give us a real concrete or definitive answer as to when that next iteration would be out. But lo and behold, we got a report out last night from Hut 8 Corp. I think this is the earliest in a month I've seen their production report come out. So to me, this seems a little bit unnecessary drama. I think they could have maybe just came out and said, hey, you know what, guys, we're going to pause this for a month. We're going to restructure it. It'll be back on the first week of July. But whatever the case is, Anthony, 107 Bitcoin produced for the month. Really nice to see a breakdown of all these different business units. It's also really nice to see they've still got over 9,100 Bitcoin on the balance sheet, 9,105. But I really like the structure here. Allows us to kind of break down, compare and contrast the different uses of their megawatts, eh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a more detailed report this month, so I quite like that. I dropped Sue a note to say it was welcomed. I think there was a lot of people questioning why they didn't put one out in the previous month. And we've seen miners do that before, and generally when they've been late or they've not bothered, it's usually because it's not a great update and they don't want to. I really think the miners that are transparent get some benefit as long as if it's just for bad management, then the share price will be affected anyway. But if it's not, if it's a case of they're doing everything right, and we've had, like I say, yesterday people were saying we don't do enough on Hut 8, but we've had Asher and we've had Sue on the podcast probably more times than anybody else this year. And
Anthony,
they
sorry to interrupt. That they were saying yesterday, just in general, Hut 8 didn't get a lot of coverage. I misinterpreted that comment, so not directed at us, just saying in general, Hut 8 doesn't
yeah,
get
and
the amount.
I can understand that as well in the fact that not everyone's speaking about Hut 8 at the moment. We talked yesterday about 2021 and Hut 8 and Hive with the IREN and the CleanSpark of today. You couldn't get enough news about them. It was great. They were doing everything right. They'd gone into buying the GPUs for Ethereum mining. They timed it perfectly. The margins were 90+%. And it was like the touching gold, everything they did then. But then as soon as 2022 happened, both basically, and the Ethereum fork was a turning point in the terms of when you lose that amount of revenues, and they were both earning significant revenues and both buying GPUs literally up until the day that the Ethereum fork occurred. So it wasn't like they were planning to stop buying these GPUs. They were still buying them. We're still making big orders, even though it was, I mean, I remember 3 or 4 years ago they were saying it's going to happen sooner, and it just kept getting delayed by months and months. And then we got to 2022, and then there was a little bit more of it's certainly going to happen this year, probably by mid-year, and it happened in the September. So there was a lot more notifications coming out and newsworthy articles talking about the fork occurring. But Hive and Hut were still buying GPUs throughout 2022. And not small orders, big orders. So they were left with all these GPUs, find out what they can do with them. And then it was like the HPC, that's an option. So both in different ways started to look at that market. Hut went and bought the 5 data centers to enhance their experience in the HPC sector. And it's interesting now with this update, they're now talking about purposing some of these GPUs now that they've got from the Ethereum days to start delivering revenues. And that's going to happen in the second half of the year. And they think they can repurpose half the ones they've got. So you'll find sometimes that GPUs can't be, they might be all right for Ethereum mining, but they might not be able to use for HPC business activities. But they've managed to repurpose, I think, 50% of their fleet. That if everything goes right in the second half of the year, that looks like potentially about 20 million of annualized revenues. So that's the sort of that's good news that you want to hear, because you've got those machines there. And I would imagine that potentially because they're already purchased and probably depreciated in full now, that's going to be quite good margins now, because at the end of the day, the decision to buy them was years ago. It's a sunk cost. Now it's a case of we can drive some revenue from that purchase. And if they can get 20 million annualized revenue, and funny enough, that's the same target that Hive are aiming for as well. I think they're at 10 at the moment, Hive, and they're looking to get to 20 by the end of the year. So in terms of GPU race for them two miners, who gets to 20 million first in terms of annualized revenue? And that's going to be like 1.6, 1.7 million per month in monthly revenues. Now, then compare that to Bit Digital, who've got a client and are about to go to $92 million a year. well, that's, 7 to 8 million a month. So, it's still a way behind them. And then you take another step up
CoreWeave.
onto another level, and you start looking at the CoreWeave deal, which we've probably done to death now, but it's still there in the, for every miner to try and achieve. And it's funny actually reading some of the updates on social media saying other miners are going to, top that. Well, come out and top it then, because that's the benchmark has been set now. So everyone, you either fall above it or you fall below it. It's a great benchmark to have. And I just wonder, getting that great deal, and I think it is a great deal. I think the margin there, 80% margin, that's a great deal. And they made it publicly, so CoreWeave know what they're making out of it. CoreWeave are as well making a great deal out of this. They'll get the revenues from what they're going to be providing, these types of AI services. They'll get the revenue back in spades. And there's an element of people out there that think Core Scientific should have held out for more money and or not gone in as quickly and got the same deal for the extra 70 megawatts. But part of me thinks, like, once you've started to say what's on the table there in terms of margins, what's to stop another miner being competitive and say, well, you know what, we'll do it for 75% margin. We'll do it for 70% margin. So it's I think Core Scientific being the first really, really big deal, and it's a game-changing deal. I mean, I do like the deal from Bit Digital, and for the size of Bit Digital, it's a fantastic deal. But you've got to remember that Core Scientific, in the next few months, if all their debt's cleared, they're going to be a $4 billion company, and Bit Digital are about a $400 million company. So there's a 10x in difference in potential market capitalization once those warrants and the notes are converted into shares. They're going to have 403 million shares around about the $10 mark. So it's about 4 billion market capitalization, sometime this year, because if the share price holds above $9.80, $9.90, then all those effectively, most of those notes and warrants get converted, and then the individuals with a tranche one warrant, the cause W warrant, they have to then exercise the option to trade it in. And Adam's come on the podcast and explained why he thinks that people should start trading that in when because he believes that the longer you hold it, you might not get the return. But that's for the. I'm not an expert in the warrant side. I have warrants in both of those warrants, and part of me is thinking, like, if the share price holds at the moment where it is, I might just sell the warrants and buy the shares and do it straight away that way. So it's there's an option there for me to do that. But it's interesting with Hut 8 doing this now, and I thought that was a good part of the update for them, going back to Hut 8. I like the fact that they've now really told you everything they're doing, so the whole business is in one update, and actually we can probably use this now to speak to other miners and saying, look, it's not just about self-mining anymore. You've got to start being open about what else you're doing, and other miners are dropping in line. So Bitdeer sort of do a similar update to this on a regular basis. Bit Digital have been doing all their businesses for quite a few months now, since we've been covering them. They've put out a full update about staking, about HPC, about self-mining. So it's a full picture, and I think that's what we need to start seeing from other miners who are doing other things. It's not just about self-mining anymore. That self-mining for Hut 8 it's probably 20% of the business. It's not a big thing, and we shouldn't be judging Hut 8 on what they do self-mining. It should be on what they're doing as a company, and then and that's not to say everything's perfect, but what I'm saying is the self-mining is a small element in terms of of the total hash rate. They've got 17.8 hash rate under management, and only 5.7 of that is actual self-mining. So it's less than a third. So it's not a big deal for them. But now this report's got everything in there. It's something now you can start looking through and identifying what else they're doing.
Yeah, I specifically like how they break down all the sites as well, Anthony, and they give that little grid there showing who owns the site, what it's purposed for, whether it's online or not, the number of megawatts. Really goes nicely with what we're trying to build on the website with that interactive map and locations. specific location details for each company. So great job to Hive, great job getting it out early and full picture there. Now moving
And
along.
just one final thing just to say is about that they've got this they call, you know, a lot of these miners now are saying it's something about a pipeline of energy for contracts. We talked about Soluna, we've talked about Bitdeer, we talked about IREN having this pipeline available. So this is like some of these miners now have got options to deliver in the future, and it looks like Hut have got a 1.1 gigawatt pipeline available on top of what they're doing at the moment. So it gives them the opportunity to expand in the future if they can put the projects together to deliver it. So
Good
again,
point. Yeah.
that's in the update. It's good to have that information as well, because you know people are thriving to get this top level of information from a mining company. And I think having missed May, it looks like Hut steps up in June.
Yeah, I'm glad you threw that in, Anthony, because it reminds me of 6 months ago when companies were coming out with these exahash target press releases and these equipment orders and equipment order option agreements, really just trying to make those numbers sound as great as they can at the time. And right now, this time is all about power agreements, megawatts under management, PPA. So really trying to broadcast that message to the world, which I think is great for these miners. Now, the next one I want to talk about is TeraWulf. So we got their production update. Another really interesting storyline here, you guys, is actually to do with the HOPA port in relation to Beowulf Energy. So they're actually looking to create a short sea trade corridor here across Lake Ontario. So we'll get into that one after the update here, Anthony. But really interesting dynamics. Not only are HPC and AI companies now looking at these sites, but you've got shipping authorities and transportation services as well. So it appears they just can't get any more fruitful at this point in time. But in terms of the production from TeraWulf, 177 Bitcoin for the month. So obviously feeling some of the pressure we talked about in the intro there in terms of Bitcoin difficulty and global hash rate and things like that. What did you feel in terms of TeraWulf's production and their operations for the month of June?
Well, so first things first, TeraWulf had a target of 10 exahash by mid-year, and so they haven't quite achieved that. They have said that in July, with the work being done on building 4, and we've seen lots of updates on building 4 and lots of machines being installed, they will achieve the 10 exahash in July. So imminently expect another update, and we'll give them the grace period for that, like we've done with other miners. CleanSpark had about 7 weeks to get there, 16 exahash, you know, at the start of this year, and we, you know, with the likes of Bitfarms not quite getting their target, but they made a valiant effort to get to 12. I mean, 11.4 up from 9.5 in a month for that size miner was a big ask. And so TeraWulf, you know, should be at 10 exahash in July, so that'll be their half-year target. I know they're planning to get closer to 14 exahash by the end of the year. They've got the 2 sites, so they've got the Nautilus site there, and they produce 41 Bitcoin at the Nautilus site. So the Nautilus site is 50 megawatts, 2 cents a kilowatt hour, round the clock. It's nuclear, so there's no curtailment effectively at that site there. Then you've got Lake Mariner, and that's more, you know, that's the market rate for energy, so it's slightly higher. And the good thing about TeraWulf when they do their updates is they actually put the cost to mine a Bitcoin in terms of energy. So the cost in June to mine 1 Bitcoin was 32,373. Now, bear in mind where the price is today at 57,000. It doesn't leave you a lot of margin there to cover all the other costs. So that's just one cost. That's the energy cost. You've then got, you know, depreciation, you've got salaries, you've got G&A costs, you've got interest payments. So, you know, and bear in mind, TeraWulf have got one of the cheapest rates. Their blended rate is I think it's only about 4.2 cents. Their blended rate. That's so like Nautilus at 2 cents. And they've got obviously a higher market rate for the month of June. And so, the blended rate of 4.2 is one of the cheapest rates out there. So if you're paying more than 4.2, you're paying more than 32,000 there. So a few of these miners will be feeling the pinch at the moment, but it won't stop them mining. I don't think we've talked about, this 29 cents. I mean, 29 cents is, that's suggesting your power's, your power to mine, a Bitcoin is 2.9 cents, but there's only about 2 or 3 miners that can do that. So there'll be a few feeling the pinch at 44. I don't think any will be turning off at the moment because remember back in December 2022 when the Bitcoin price dropped to 15,000. None of the miners switched off then, so I think they'll wait it out. The expectation Bitcoin rallies in the next 2 or 3 months is like every other cycle, so they'll be hoping for that to happen. And maybe at 57,000 now, institutions might be thinking this is our time to jump in, get a cheap price for Bitcoin. It's dropped 20%. We were thinking of getting it at 73. Now we've got a chance to get it at 57. And I said to you yesterday, if you know what you're buying, this is a buying price at the moment. 57,000 is a buying price for those people that understand Bitcoin. If you're in it just to, as a quick swing trade or something like that, then Bitcoin isn't really for you. But the people that want to be in Bitcoin for the longevity of it and understand what it stands for and it's a store of value, then 57,000 is a great buying price for them because it was, March the 13th, which is 3.5 months ago, it was 20% higher. But yeah, so TeraWulf have obviously, they sell their Bitcoin on a daily basis, so they don't have a hodl, and Paul's been articulate as to why they do that. They'll make some announcements soon about another debt repayment, so we're expecting more news on that there. But it's not a major concern because, end of the day, TeraWulf is owned effectively internally. More than 40% of the shares are held by the management team. Some of the debts held by the management team. Beowulf, who's the energy company, is owned by the management team. So, they've got everything covered on that side. They're fully diversified. They've also said they're putting together their 2 megawatts applied to HPC at Lake Mariner site there. So that's their test. That's their test period, and they're looking to try and grow another site there of about 16 to 20 megawatts. And that should, if you think of what Bit Digital are using in terms of power for their 92 million annualized revenue, what TeraWulf are saying they'll do now is effectively using twice as much power as Bit Digital be using. So, you could articulate that could be, closer to $200 million of revenue a year. So that could be a really good revenue business to bring in while the mining sometimes has the volatility there. So it's disappointing they didn't make the 10, but I think we're literally days away from achieving the 10. I think
I will say,
so many
Anthony,
updates.
They didn't hit the 10, but they have 8.8 installed and operating. So that's the nice part about it, right? Is the machines
well,
are
they have it. I think they have 8.8 sold, but their average hash rate for the month, I think, is 7.1. So again, and actually, if you think about May, their average operational hash rate in May was 7.6. So they've lost half an exahash, whilst growing their top line exahash, a little bit. Now, what they have put in the report is they have curtailed, and there will be some sort of like demand response credits coming back to them, but they're not included in the numbers. So, like Riot, who put out everything regarding power sales, demand response credits, and they achieved 6.2 million this month. Some of the other companies don't do that on a monthly basis. They have to in their quarterly reports because it's part of their finances. So they've got to list everything there. So we'll get to see in August what sort of that looks like for quarter 2. So that'll be interesting. But I hope that miners start, thinking, what, let's just put it in the monthly report. If you've got an idea what you're expecting to get, and it just gives a bit more flavour to the numbers then, because it certainly helps. If Riot don't do it, I mean, their production numbers, there's a gap, and so they're showing the fact that we've got a gap, but we've been doing other things with the power to bring in revenue. So But overall, you know, TeraWulf bring out decent reports every month, and we just get to your 10, get to the 13.3 by the end of the year. That's what you'd be monitored on there. Grow your HPC. That's a nice business there. Pay down your debt, and I think shareholders will remain happy and stay with the stock.
Yeah, I thought overall a fairly bullish report for them. The other component here, and this actually dates back to an article that came out on May 21st from the Hopa Port. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, this is the Hamilton Oshawa Port Authority. So this is based in Canada. I guess what's been going on here, Anthony, is the trade between the two countries, Canada, United States, obviously a massive, massive trading partner. I think they quote $494 billion of annual trade. The current routes between the two countries at this location, they're bogged down and they don't have enough availability to basically move goods and services back and forth. So they've been working on identifying a property, and they basically come up with the Somerset site. Now, interestingly enough, Somerset site is also the home of the Lake Mariner data facility, which is owned by TeraWulf. However, the company that manages that site is Beowulf, and Paul Prager is also the CEO of Beowulf. So basically, the community here has come together and said, not only now do companies want these assets and infrastructure for HPC AI, but they may also be eyeing this location for a whole new purpose. So Paul Prager's come out. He said Somerset's promising future has long been anchored in its advantageous location along the shores of Lake Ontario. So that's basically where this trade corridor is going to be. The exceptional quality of our infrastructure and exceptional local workforce. We're thrilled that Hopa has recognized these same qualities and sought to partner with us on this exciting transportation project. So this one really caught me by surprise, Anthony, but I wanted to get your take on this as a completely new candidate in the race for some of this infrastructure and asset, I guess an 1,800 acre asset or project that TeraWulf has exposure to.
Yeah, I mean, not just TeraWulf, but other miners who've got these big potential sites. We talked yesterday about IREN having these sites as well. There's going to be a value placed on these sites now. If it comes with power as well, even more profitable there. But it sounds like it's another business opportunity for Paul, and he's very much open to business opportunities. It wasn't that long ago he was saying if Amazon were to take over the whole of Nautilus, he wouldn't be against receiving a nice big check from Amazon to take their percentage away. So he's not going to stand up and fight all the time. But he's got 1,800 acres of space there. It's a sizable space, and like I say, it'll have a good value. So again, for the business, it's a positive thing. Always trying to grow revenue streams, and this might be one great revenue stream. I mean, certainly if they can sort of manage it or sort of be part of it, so they have a constant revenue stream coming through, it could be good for the company, because when you have revenue streams like that, these are sort of contracted, guaranteed revenue streams. And we've talked about the Bitcoin volatility. So mining can be great. Also, there can be days like today where it's not as good because you're getting 5-6% less than you were getting a couple of days ago in terms of revenues, and that's quite a big volatility. You don't really want volatility. You want to have more predictable revenue streams, and things like HPC, things like even some of the hosting is actually more predictable than the self-mining. So Soluna have a hosting business there, and they host some of the other miners. They know it doesn't matter what the Bitcoin price is for them. They're getting basically because the energy is so cheap there, they're getting a margin on the energy price. So that gets paid irrespective.
Yeah, it's really interesting as this sector and industry continues to evolve, Anthony. All of the new opportunities that are being highlighted for these companies just based on the assets, the infrastructure that they have access to. So this is a story we'll continue to watch. Obviously, we're going to continue to get production results out from the other major miners here in the back half of the week, early next week. So we'll continue to keep updates coming, Anthony. Happy 4th of July, as we mentioned to all of our US viewers. If you guys are still watching, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. Anthony, I'll kick it back to you for any closing thoughts on the 4th of July here.
4th of July. So over there, it's Independence Day, but in the UK, it's actually election day. So people are voting today, and we'll have by tomorrow we'll probably have maybe a new prime minister announced. The only thing is, at the moment, I mean, with world politics, it's all a bit dire at the moment. I'm not sure any country can really stand up and say we've got a great system in place, because we're just seeing people just going against what's there at the moment, and actually what's potentially coming in place isn't that much better in most instances. And so, I've got to decide in the next sort of maybe 4 or 5 hours if I'm going to get down to the polling station and cast my vote for today. But I just look at what the alternatives are. It's not looking great at the moment. So from a UK perspective, I don't know how many other people are sort of in the same position, but we've had one party in for 14 years, and it's not been great. But then you've got to think about what happened in the last 14 years. We had the COVID, and we've had wars and things like that. So how does a government manage during those processes? And then you've got a list of parties that want to take over, but the track record of them parties ain't any better. So it's like we've got the sublime and the ridiculous to choose from at the moment. So I'll leave you with that note from the UK, because we have some sort of I suppose we have a little bit of the part of the Independence Day for the US as well. And if history repeats, it's not there.
Well, that's why we all look to Bitcoin, Anthony. You take your future in your own hands and your own destiny there.
Oh, Bitcoin.
As they say, Bitcoin fixes that. You guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.